Paris, thank you. The month of May means it is prime time for action in Springfield. The legislature is set to wrap up its business by the end of the month. Amanda Vinicky joins us now with a look at what is on the General Assembly's plate. Amanda.
Yeah, Brandis, it is a very full plate. And why? Well, because of what else? The pandemic. A truncated session last year means a lot of issues that would have been dealt with then are instead on this year's plate, if you will. And whatever is going to happen, it has to be done by May 31st. So State Representative Mike Zaleski says it's not quite crunch time, but things are getting busy in Springfield.
There's a lot of meetings taking place, a lot of staff review, a lot of amendments being filed. So we're certainly in the zone.
At the top of the must-happen list, a new roughly $41 billion state budget. And once again, COVID plays a starring role.
Revenues are both down and our expenses have gone up. Yeah, I mean, as a result of any number of issues related to Medicaid or the need to appropriately help those struggling because of the pandemic. And so that coupled with the revenue loss is putting a little strain on the budget. We project right now that the budget committees have to go out and close about a $1.6 billion deficit. Not great, but also not insurmountable.
The legislature is looking at closing some tax loopholes or doing away with some tax credits to fill that hole, but making things a whole lot easier. The $7.5 billion that Illinois is going to be getting from the federal government as part of its COVID relief package. But an issue being that Illinois doesn't yet know when that money is going to actually arrive, nor what restrictions are going to come with it, because there will be rules that the state has to follow when it spends that money.
Well, the federal government has indicated that we should have the regulations we need within the next week or two. I think that's plenty of time, frankly, because we've done a lot of work on budget stuff to date. We have a general outline of what it is that we need to spend money on. The question is, how can we use the federal money to really kind of plug in where so that we can craft our needs around it.
Now, another big item, the once-a-decade process of drawing legislative districts. Democrats want that done by the end of session, but Republicans say map making doesn't actually deserve a spot on that must-happen-by-May list, because that would mean that the state would have to use faulty data to draw those maps, since the federal census information isn't expected until mid-August. All right, now, changing topics. Rewind the clock back to February when Governor J.B. Pritzker gave his joint budget and State of the State address.
It's time to pass ethics legislation this year. Nobody should hold the title of both legislator and lobbyist at the same time.
The governor in February had other items on his agenda, too.
The to-do list is long, but it includes key priorities like finally authorizing the overdue second cannabis licensing lottery and passing an energy bill that protects our nuclear fleet and builds up our wind and solar industries.
So we'll see what happens on ethics there. And now when it comes to what he was talking about with marijuana, it has been a year since a batch of 75 licenses were supposed to have been awarded to so-called social equity applicants to open up more marijuana dispensaries. That still hasn't happened a year later, though there is a bill that aims to get that going. As for energy, Pritzker does have his own plan, but so do clean energy advocates. Unions have their own, and this comes as Exelon is threatening to shut down a pair of nuclear plants if the state doesn't pass a law that would have customers pay to keep them open. But all of this has added complexity because of the ethics scandal surrounding ComEd. Pritzker, meanwhile, dealing with all of this as he's facing a scandal of his own. A recent audit says there was widespread mismanagement at the state's Veteran Affairs Department this fall when 36 veterans died at the state veterans home in LaSalle. Pritzker has thus far blamed his since ousted Veterans Affairs Director, but critics say that the governor needs to apologize and they're calling for hearings.
I think the governor needs to be a little more humble in this situation after the way that he used the last Quincy Home report as a political weapon to his advantage and exploited and took advantage of that at every turn that he possibly could. He needs to be a little more humble and actually take responsibility for this, because right now we see a lot of deflection coming from him.
Beyond that, there are literally hundreds of bills percolating in the Capitol. Some deal with controversial topics like guns and gambling. Others deal with everything from midwifery to a plan that would prohibit schools from banning certain hairdos.
We've seen a lot of instances of Black children across the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois, and across the country who have been traumatized by outdated school policies that, to put it bluntly, police their hairstyles.
Making things slightly complicated and getting any of this done is that a lot of these hearings are happening virtually because of COVID, which means, as many of us has had to learn this year, you just have to roll with the Zoom punches, like when this mom's child wanted her attention while she was testifying at a legislative hearing. Now, we're going to be seeing a lot more of this. The legislature is in fairly consistently through the end of the month, so look for a lot of changes, progress, if you want to call it that, before the month is out. Brandis, back to you.
Amanda, thank you.